Welcome back to Bare Metal Machine and part 2 of my rotary table demonstration. Today I'm going to be talking more about manual controls such as jogging and indexing. Okay, let me begin by talking about jogging. First we need to fire up the rotary table controller. Next we go to Modes, C-Axis Enable. Now when you first enable the controller, the table's going to do this little back and forth action here, like plus or minus 5 degrees. That's the backlash algorithm getting itself set up. It only does this once when you first enable it, so you need to be sure that when you enable the controller that your hands and any cutting tools are free and clear. Okay, so to jog the table, we go to Menu, Rotary, and then we go down to Jog Mode. Right now it says right for clockwise, left for counterclockwise. So that's these two buttons here. So if you hit the right button, the table takes off going clockwise. And if you hit any other button, including the right button, it will stop. It will decelerate and stop, and it will display the angle that it landed at. So go left counterclockwise. Hit any other button, decelerates and it stops, and it gives you the angle that it stopped at. And we can always get back home by leaving this menu and going back to the main menu and hitting cancel rotation, okay? And the table will go back where it started, 0 degrees. Okay, another interesting thing you can do with jog mode is, let's go back to the rotary menu, rotary, and this time I'm going to pick rotate part also. Okay, now when I go to jog mode, and let's move the table. All right, that's enough. Now, okay, and it landed at 31.994 degrees. Okay, let's leave this menu, go back out to the main screen, and the part is rotated also at that exact angle. And okay, you can also get back home just by, once again, hitting cancel rotation, and the part goes home, back to 0 degrees, and the geometry is rotated back to 0 degrees as well. Okay, remember this part from the last video and how I was able to command the table to rotate to some arbitrary angle. An angle having nothing to do with the angular features on the part itself. And yet I was still able to position the tool precisely with respect to that geometry. And it's because the part geometry tracks with rotation. Now we can do the same thing with jogging. Okay, let's get over to the rotary menu. And we need to set rotate part also on, okay, just like before. Now we'll go to jog mode, and I'm just going to move the table to some arbitrary angle. All right, that looks good. Okay, so it stopped at 63.938 degrees. Let's go back out to the main screen, and we see the part model is indeed rotated. Now, let me move the tool on that line. See the line that's on radar? The one that's in red right here. Okay? I'm just going to move the tool so the center line of the tool is right on that line. Okay? Let me zoom in on it. I'm not going to use the radar, so I'm just going to do this visually. Okay? Yeah, it looks pretty close right there. All right? And we can see that the tool is indeed pointing exactly on that line. Now, we can also use other features. For instance, I can go back out to the main menu here, and since that line is on radar, I can say align with Y, okay? And, right, so it rotated to 68.178 degrees, making that line parallel to the Y-axis. And if I again, let me zoom in on it, move the tool so it's exactly on that line. That looks pretty close. Now look, the tool is indeed pointing precisely on that line, and that line is parallel to the Y-axis. Okay, a couple more things here. Now, let's say that the table happened to have been rotated to some angle, like 45.365 degrees. For some reason, just pretend I had a reason to be there. Now, let me point to some feature on the part, say the center of this hole. Let me zoom way in on it. Okay, I could use the radar to get it perfect, but why bother fussing with it when the template isn't perfect? Okay, so I'm pointing right at the center of that hole. Now, imagine there's some reason that I've got to rotate the table away from that angle. I don't know, so maybe it's easier for me to measure that hole or something. So I can go to rotate part, and I can say minus 90 degrees. That's where I want to be. Okay, so the table's arrived at minus 90, and then I do whatever I need to do to that hole. Now I want to get back to the angle where I was. So out on the main menu, I don't want to use cancel rotation, because that's going to take the C-axis back to 0 degrees. What I really want is to go to the rotary menu and use the return function. Okay, return. Now this is going to bring me back to the angle that I was at before I rotated the table away. And you see we're right back where we belong. And it works for jogging also. For instance, if I go to the jog menu and let's say I just jog the table some arbitrary amount. Right? And I do whatever I got to do at that angle. And then I want to get back to where I was. Okay, so I can just go back to the return function. Okay? And it's going to go back to 45.365 degrees. Okay, we're right back where we started. Okay, one last thing. Now, what rotary axis system would be complete without the ability to do indexing? So imagine we've got some kind of part like this where we have some machining features, some milling and drilling to be done at equidistant angular locations. Okay, so a scenario like that is ordinarily handled with indexing, and we can do that. Okay, let's load up the part model now. It's this file here with the imaginative name of circular thing. Okay, now notice that the part model, it only has one instance of the geometry that we're going to be indexing, and that's because you want to keep the models as small as you can, and there's no reason to clutter up the model with a lot of data that isn't necessary. Okay, so that's why there's only one of these things when there's 10 of these. Okay, now the first thing I have to do is get my table aligned. I already know the center of rotation has been established. Now I need to align the part so it's timed correctly with the C-axis, and I'm just going to make this line here parallel to the X-axis. Okay, so I'm going to go to Rotary, Auto 0, locate first point, hit OK. You've seen me do this a million times. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay. Okay, let's just check it. Okay, close enough. Okay, so let's say I'm going to start by drilling this little hole here first. So I'm going to go to radar, holes mode, and that was convenient. The first hole that lit up on radar is circle 2, this one. So now I just need to focus the center of the tool on the center of that hole, and oops, going the wrong way. There we go. Let's say that was close enough. All right, so I'm right on the center of that hole. Now I go to Menu, Rotary, Index Parameters, and it's 20 degrees. Okay. So now I also need to go to Modes and Index Enable. Okay. So now Index is enabled. Now every time I hit, it's the 1 key that causes it to index. Okay. So let's say I just drill this hole. All right. I drill. Okay. Hit the 1 key, index. Drill. Index. Drill, index, and so on. Okay, now you may be wondering why, when I was doing the indexing, that my part geometry disappeared from the view. And the reason is, remember out here in Rotary, in the Rotary menu, the rotate part also, that was set. Okay, so that meant that every time I indexed, the geometry of the part was getting rotated also. You can disable that if you don't want to rotate. But anyways, that's why the part looks like this now. The original part, the original geometry is way over here, and that matches what's on the screen, and that's because I had rotate part also set. Okay, so now to do the milling, I've replaced my pointer with this pin. It's an 1/8 inch in diameter. That's going to represent our end mill. Now, on the rotary menu here, I want to disable rotate part also, because this is a case where I do not want the geometry to rotate with each index, because there's only one instance of this geometry, so I don't want it to go out of view. Okay, so let's zoom in on this thing. I've already set the tool to an 1/8 inch in diameter. Okay, and oops, there we go. Okay, now let me set the mode to index enable. Okay, and the index parameter should still be set to 20 degrees. Okay, now I would simply bring the tool down into the workpiece, and I would do my milling. Of course, I'd be using the radar, of course, to get really precise if I wanted to. And I would do milling and milling, and okay. Right, I would pick the tool up, then I would index. Right, put the tool back into the work. Now I'm going to mill again. Okay. Okay. Pick the tool up, index. Okay. Mill again. And so on. Well, that concludes my rotary table demonstration part 2. There's a little more to cover, but I'm going to save that for a future video. One thing I want to stress is that you do not need the Cartesian display to use the rotary table. Just like you don't need the rotary table to use the Cartesian display. They're separate systems. The rotary table can be commanded by, say, a laptop or any other type of computer, as long as it has a USB interface. And I may add other interfaces in the future, a wireless interface like Bluetooth, for instance. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for watching.